some sad news for you. Historian Ed Bears passed away a few days ago. I was able to just get it into the call. But for those of you who never had a chance to meet him, he was quite a character, but he believed in history being the things that you have a chance to partly witness. And so even after it was no longer his job, he gave tours of the Gettysburg battlefield. And he spent 13 years as the chief historian for the National Park Service. He wrote quite a few books, and actually his most recent one co-authored was just a few years ago. But his passing was not totally unexpected. He was pretty old, but still, it's sad to lose a historian of his note.
And Michael, I did have to mute you. We're getting feedback coming off of your mic, so when you're ready, you can unmute on your end as well.
Any other announcements from you, Nick?
No, I think that'll be it. We can get the meeting started.
Great. Well, I'm happy to be able to present our speaker tonight. For some of you that may not already know Jim, he has been a professor at Los Angeles Harbor College, where he got rave reviews from the students. I know one review called him the best professor he's had from 4 different universities. He found Jim to be the best. There was one complaint, though, and that is that while you learned a lot from Jim's classes, you had to work hard. Imagine that in class. You know? But Jim has promised no homework today, just strictly a presentation. Jim also has a record as being the speaker who has given the most presentations at the West Coast Civil War conferences. Jim, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you've only missed like 1 or so.
Yes, I believe so.
And always a popular speaker. Now, if we won't be able to do it with the online presentation, but if we get Jim back again when we're able to have our regular meetings in the library, I think we'll have to persuade him to lead us in a raucous presentation of goober peas, which if you've never heard Jim do that, it's something not to be missed, okay? Jim has many honors, but I think the best honor we can give him is that he's always one of the most popular speakers on Civil War topics anytime he gives a presentation. Jim, I turn it over to you.
All right. Actually, before we do that, I need to be able to transfer the control over. I do want to mention just one thing. We are doing something a little bit different for what it is that we're doing. So here's what I want to be able to share. So basically, if you're looking at my screen, you'll see a small window with Jim at the top, and then you'll see the presentation as we're starting to move through that. So what's going to happen here is a little bit different. What I would suggest to you is that at the top of your screen, there is a drop down there, and it allows you to be able to go in and to be able to choose to be able to view just who's speaking. And if you choose that, Jim will show up in a small window and you would be able to see the presentation there. And then below that, you would be able to see the actual screen for what he's sharing. So that's the way we're going to do it. I'm going to transfer that over now, and let me actually do this and give it over. I do want to mention, I mentioned this already, that Doug is actually the one is helping us out with this, and that Doug has been helping Jim for a number of years and has graciously offered both his services as well as his home, and he actually helped to be able to put the presentation together. So without his help, we really would have been struggling to be able to have the presentation this evening. So I have transferred it over now there, Doug. We should be able to do it, and if you can go ahead and share your screen when you're ready there, we should be able to see you, and then when Jim starts speaking, we'll be able to hear him there as well.
All right. How's that?
We're not seeing your screen yet. We're seeing Jim on the screen is great, but you're not sharing
Great.
your screen locally within.
Oh, I actually clicked on the share, so it says people could see my app.
There, now we see it. Okay, it just came in. Perfect.
Okay. Okay. Great.
Okay.
Now, what do we do to get rid of this little corner box again?
It just pick it up and slide it down and just drag it out of the way, because I would just click like on the where it says in between the go to meeting and the X, and just drag that down and get it out of the way. It's the best that we could do in there for that.
Kind of like that.
I haven't seen it move yet.
Oh.
Oh, actually, it looks like it's just coming in now. Let's see. Have we got it down?
No. Trying to figure out how to get rid of. There it goes. Okay. Now I got to start this again. There we go. How's that?
I think we're looking good.
Great.
So I'm on.
You're on. They can see you and they can see the presentation.
Yeah, it's as some of you may know, I was born and raised in Pasadena. And, so my folks left there in '63, and everything has been downhill since. I remember Pasadena with great fondness. In your latest issue of the Call, it said that I may have been a member of your roundtable longer than anyone who is still currently at staff. I'm not sure. But, in any case, our topic tonight is, could the Confederacy have done any better than Davis? And I want to acknowledge A Government of Our Own, The Making of the Confederacy by William C. Davis, as the book from which all the quotations in this presentation are taken from, unless otherwise stated. So here we go.
The screen has to change. It's not changing for some reason. Okay.
The Confederacy had two opportunities to select a president. First, at the meeting of its Provisional Congress during the balloting on February 9th, 1861. Next, through one of the last acts of the Provisional Congress, the election of a permanent president on November 14th, after 4 border states had joined the Confederacy.
Wait for the application to change to that.
So you give me the signal. Okay. What strengths and weaknesses did the man initially chosen, Jefferson Davis, show? How did any of the other men actually considered for the presidency by the Provisional Congress compare with Davis? Then the balloting 9 months after the first election could have included contenders from the border states seceding after Fort Sumter and not belonging to the Confederacy back in February. Were there any such possibilities? So let's define our terms. By original secessionists is meant a leader preaching disunion conditionally or even unconditionally before the election of 1860. A post-Carolina secessionist would have been a leader who had remained a Unionist, however reluctantly, that is, had never, not through all the agitation of the 1850s, not even after Lincoln's election, called upon his own state to leave the Union, not until after South Carolina had already left. And finally, an after-the-fact secessionist would have been a leader who opposed disunion right up to the point when his own state had already seceded. So that's original secessionists, post-Carolina secessionists, after-the-fact secessionists. Who then were the original secessionists?
Robert Cromwell Rhett is the name we'll first take into consideration. Rhett manifested every manifestation of the high-toned Southern aristocrat, yet much was pretense. Behind his high forehead, dignified whiskers, and calm blue-gray eyes lay a narrow mind, obstinate and more than a little vain. Wholly committed to secession since 1850, he had been one of the most extreme proponents of Southern rights since he first stepped into the South Carolina state legislature in 1826. According to historian Jacob S. Clausen, he was a bullish politician whose blend of acerbic wit, fire demeanor, and political tact aroused the full spectrum of emotions from his constituents and colleagues. He could not balance his volatile personality with his otherwise keen political skills. Would he have made a better president of the Confederacy than Davis? Aside from brief service as Attorney General of South Carolina, Rhett lacked administrative experience as well as a military background. Temperament would have been an even greater disqualification. Southerners somehow instinctively understood that deep flaws ran through the characters of men like Rhett. The fire eaters were political renegades, men who worked outside the system to foment discord within it, and with no responsibility or accountability for the body politic. They were controversialists, dismantlers, not builders. Seasoned statesmen and the more discerning electorate recognized that such men promised only ruin if entrusted with real power. William Lowndes Yancey, a Georgian by birth, he grew up in South Carolina. He stood out as a prominent Unionist in his youth, but after moving to Alabama in the late 1830s, and especially after the Mexican War, he rapidly shifted his position toward sectionalism. Tall, powerfully built, he was a born mover of men. He has no smoothness or elegance in his mien, observed one Alabaman. He has only massive strength and fiery earnestness. He was mortified at not being chosen as a member of Alabama's delegation to the Montgomery gathering that created the provisional government of the Confederacy. During the American Civil War, Yancey was appointed by Confederate President Jefferson Davis to head a diplomatic delegation to Europe in the attempt to secure formal recognition of Southern independence. In these efforts, Yancey was unsuccessful and frustrated. Upon his return to America in 1862, Yancey was elected to the Confederate States Senate, where he was a frequent critic of the Davis administration. Suffering from ill health for much of his life, Yancey died during the Civil War in July of 1863 at the age of just 48. Would he have made a better president of the Confederacy than Davis? His lack of administrative or military experience would have compromised his performance as chief executive or commander-in-chief, and his temperament as a fiery loner might have rendered him even more incapable of dealing constructively with others than Davis often seemed. Now, perhaps quite naturally, state legislators who had not favored secession prior to the election of 1860 were inclined to mistrust the minority who had. So most states, in selecting delegates to the meeting of the Provisional Congress first convened on February 4th, 1861, balanced their delegation between post-Carolina and after-the-fact secessionists, with relatively few seats awarded to original secessionists, not even by South Carolina. The two men who were elected president and vice president of the Confederacy, Jefferson Davis and Alexander Stevenson were therefore ideally positioned for selection. Davis had not sought to be a delegate, and so was not even present in Montgomery, and had entrusted one who was, with a letter stating his sincere disinterest in any position, but with less than Shermanesqueness. Alexander Stephens was present, but he assumed his status as perhaps the most reluctant secessionist he was, would make him ineligible for consideration. Obviously, both Davis and Stephens miscalculated. They were not only considered, they were elected. Davis and Stephens failed to take into account two factors: the unpredictable cross currents that would dissolve the prospects of the open post-Carolina contenders, Toombs and Cobb, and the importance of attracting border states into the Confederacy. Now, we'll get to Toombs and Cobb in just a minute. But first, we have to make clear the geography of the thing. There were 15 slave states, only 7 of them represented at Montgomery. These 7 comprised the lower South, the Cotton Kingdom. That's these states here. Which left the states in which much of the foodstuffs that were grown in the South, along with almost all of its industrial potential, still in the Union. If war were to come, at least some of these border states would be necessary for the Confederacy, both for their resources and to shield the Deep South from harm. So the Confederacy's appeal to the border states would presumably be enhanced by the selection of chief executives who shared the border states' own hesitation. So we have the Deep South states, we have these 8 border states. In the end, after Fort Sumter, these 4, the lower 4 of the border states, will go out of the Union into the Confederacy, while the states here will remain in the Union. Now, Jefferson Davis's great strength as a post-Carolina secessionist was the unity of his own state in preferring him, the only state whose delegates were united in a single preference. The lean 52-year-old Ramrod Strait Mississippian had been a war hero in Mexico in 1847, and then as senator, secretary of war, and senator once more, a firm though not extreme champion of Southern rights. Born in Kentucky in 1808, less than 100 miles from where Abraham Lincoln was born a year later, Davis's family moving southwest across the Tennessee River, while Lincoln's moved northwest across the Ohio River. Davis lived a restrained childhood with a painfully austere father. Davis secured a good education for one reared on the Mississippi frontier, and hoped to be a lawyer when he entered Transylvania University before his father's death. Thereafter, he answered the dictates of his older brother Joseph, whom he idolized, and who insisted on his attending the military academy at West Point. He married the daughter of future President Zachary Taylor, only to be widowed tragically a few months later, and then spent nearly a decade as a semi-recluse. Only with his remarriage in 1845 to Farina Howell and his emergence in local Democratic politics did Davis really return to the world. But of the post-Carolina secessionists, why did Davis get the nod rather than Toombs or Cobb? Who's Toombs? Who's Cobb? Robert Augustus Toombs was a big man, 6 feet tall or more, solid frame and broad shoulders, long, shiny black hair rimmed a strong face, and flew about like a lion's mane as he shook his whole head while speaking. His face perpetually changed from smile to scowl, dominated every immediate expression, dominated always by brilliantly white teeth and lawless dark eyes. The pro forma expectation was that Georgia would get the presidency. What with Cobb, Toombs, and Stevens, all possibilities. And the top spot would probably have gone to Georgia had the Georgians been able to unite behind a single candidate to begin with. As it was, the Georgians canceled each other out. Toombs was initially the only name placed in nomination. Get that? Initially, Toombs was the only name placed in nomination for the presidency, in part due to his and Stevens' deep affection for each other. But Toombs promptly sunk himself. At a party hosted by the Chestnuts, the wine and wit flowed freely, and Toombs partook of both in equal measure. The result was disastrous. Where Bob Toombs was concerned, Stevens told his brother, "I think that evening's exhibition settled the presidency." He was appointed Secretary of State, the only administrative position he ever held, and soon resigned in part due to his objections to the attack on Fort Sumter. Made a brigadier general, he resigned that post in disgust at not having been promoted to major general after distinguishing himself at the Battle of Antietam. He no longer sought political office, but remained of some consequence as a power behind the scenes in Georgia politics for the rest of his life. Would he have made a better president than Davis? Given his lack of administrative or high-level military experience, it is hard to say how well he would have functioned as a chief executive or commander-in-chief. But if you admire Trump's conduct of the presidency, you might have loved Toombs' presidency. Howell Cobb was a man of amiable and conciliatory temper, said South Carolinian William Trescott, with a clear head, very decided opinions himself, always willing to listen, and combine the opinions of others for practical action. Cobb spent 5 terms in Congress, one of them as Speaker of the House. Ardent Southern rights men considered him a traitor in 1850 when he supported the Compromise of 1850, and then went on to win the governorship the following year at the head of the Union Party that he organized. Sensing that estrangement from the Democratic Party would mean his eventual doom, Cobb tried to return to the fold in 1853, but only left both Unionists and states' rights men suspicious. Not until 1856, when he firmly embraced the Southern rights platform, did Democrats gradually accept him once more. In Buchanan's administration, he was the only Deep South man of influence and served in the cabinet right to the moment of secession. In time, Cobb felt his strength in Georgia renewing. By late 1859, he even dreamed of a presidential nomination, and only a bitter debate in the state party convention prevented his name from being put forward at Charlestown that April. Still, he supported the Southern rights candidate, John C. Breckinridge, in the campaign that followed, And when Lincoln won, he quickly declared secession the South's only alternative.
Can't go too far.
Would he have made a better president of the Confederacy than Davis? His lack of military experience might have compromised his performance as commander-in-chief, but he did have real administrative experience as governor of Georgia, as secretary of the Treasury, and as presiding officer of the Confederate Provisional Congress. Alexander Hamilton Stevens was right in feeling his stance as an after-the-fact secessionist precluded his selection as president. But with Davis as the consensus for the top spot, it made Stevens the irresistible choice for the vice presidency. In fact, he stood 5 feet 7 inches in average height, but his body was so frail and perpetually emaciated that most at first took him for a boy. A more pinched up, misshapen, dead in the live specimen of humanity could not be found, said one on meeting him. He weighed as little as 80 pounds much of the time and never got above 100. Arms and body dangled long and bony claw-like, with joints swollen from arthritis. He stood stooped thanks to a pinched nerve in his spine. Everything that could afflict man's internal organs attacked him, from angina to colitis. Migraine headaches incapacitated him. Pneumonia almost killed him 3 times. Diarrhea robbed his bones of their little flesh. Pasty, pale skin hung about his face. Innumerable wrinkles emanating spoke-like from his eyes. That's a picture of Alex Stevens. Stevens attended Franklin College and established a legal practice in his hometown of Crawfordville, Georgia. After serving in both houses of the Georgia General Assembly, he won election to Congress, taking his seat in 1843. As a Whig member who opposed the Mexican War, he formed a personal friendship with a like-minded Whig congressman named Lincoln. As the Whig Party collapsed in the 1850s and Lincoln joined the Republicans, Stevens joined the Democrats. After the war, Stevens was a prominent supporter of the Compromise of 1850 and helped draft the Georgia Platform, which opposed secession. A proponent of the expansion of slavery into the territories, Stevens also helped pass the Kansas-Nebraska Act. Stevens declined to seek re-election in 1858, but continued to publicly advocate against secession. After Georgia and other southern states seceded and formed the Confederate States of America, Stevens was elected as the Confederate vice president. Stevens' cornerstone speech in March 1861 defended slavery, though after the war, he distanced himself from his earlier sentiments. In the course of the war, he became increasingly critical of President Jefferson Davis's policies, especially conscription and the suspension of habeas corpus. In February 1865, he was one of the commissioners who met with Abraham Lincoln at the aborted Hampton Roads Conference to discuss peace terms. After the war, Stevens was imprisoned until October 1865. The following year, the Georgia legislature elected Stevens to the United States Senate, but the Senate declined to seat him along with the other prominent ex-Confederates returned to office, but denied seating during the period before Congress had decided on a Reconstruction policy. He won election to the House of Representatives in 1873 and was seated and held that office until 1882, when he resigned from Congress to become governor of Georgia. Stevens served as governor until his death in March 1883.
And Hang on, I'll do it. One more. Hang on. We didn't the button. Hang on, stop. Just wait. Okay, we need to go back one. Hang on, okay.
Would he have made a better president of the Confederacy than Davis? His stance as an after-the-fact secessionist would have precluded his selection in the February ballot. But what about in November? Assuming sufficient dissatisfaction with Davis had arisen by then to have made an alternative possible. He was capable of stirring oratory, except for his frequent illnesses, and might have fulfilled the public persona required of a president. And in the last year of the war, his openness toward Reconstruction, together with his personal relationship with Lincoln, might have created possibilities for peace.
Okay, I went too far. Hang on. Okay, just press it once. Okay, great.
John Bell.
Great. Okay.
John Bell. One of Tennessee's most prominent antebellum politicians, he served in the House of Representatives from 1827 to 1841.
Here, give me the device. I'll do it by hand. Okay. Give me the device. Okay, go. I'm yeah.
You can go forward.
Go ahead.
One of Tennessee's most prominent antebellum politicians, he served in the House of Representatives from 1827 to 1841 and in the Senate from 1847 to 1859. He was Speaker of the House for the 23rd Congress, 1834 to 35, and briefly served as Secretary of War during the administration of Harrison. In 1860, he ran for president as the candidate for the Constitutional Unionist Party, a third party which took a neutral stance on the issue of slavery. That's John Bell. Next slide. Would he have made a better president of the Confederacy than Davis? His stance as an after-the-fact secessionist would have precluded his selection in the February ballot. But what about in November? Assuming sufficient dissatisfaction with Davis had arisen by then to have made an alternative possible. He was capable of stirring oratory, and except for his frequent illnesses, might have fulfilled the public persona required of the president. In the last year, his openness toward Reconstruction, together with his personal relationship with Lincoln, might have created possibilities for peace. In case you noticed, that was a slide we already did.
I know.
So, yeah.
There we go. My apologies. That's the wrong button.
Back to John Bell. Initially an ally of Andrew Jackson, Bell turned against Jackson in the mid-1830s and aligned himself with the Whig Party, a shift which earned him the nickname the Great Apostate. He consistently battled Jackson's allies, principally James K. Polk, over issues such as the National Bank and the election spoil system. Following the death of Hugh Walton White in 1840, Bell became the acknowledged leader of Tennessee's Whigs. Although a slave owner, Bell was one of the few Southern politicians to oppose the expansion of slavery in the 1850s and campaigned vigorously against secession in the years leading up to the American Civil War. During his 1860 presidential campaign, he argued that secession was unnecessary since the Constitution protected slavery, an argument which resonated with voters in border states, helping him capture the electoral votes in Tennessee, Kentucky, and Virginia.
I think we got,
This is fine.
I think we got kicked out. I'm not sure.
Oh, we're still hearing you, Doug.
Okay, great, because I received an error message from GoToMeeting.
Okay.
So
I'm
on.
But
I'm not
if you're
seeing
seeing,
I'm not seeing the same slide that is on the video with Jim though. I'm seeing a
yeah,
different slide.
it's yeah. I advanced it one, and you're still frozen on the previous slide.
I'm seeing a cartoon at the bottom.
Yeah, that's the previous slide. I've advanced to the next one. So
Okay.
we have a GoToMeeting issue apparently.
Okay. Give me just a moment here.
Yeah, I think it kicked me. I don't see the app.
Okay. Yeah. Give me just a moment. I'm sorry.
We could just watch Jim.
We're going to be able to do it. We need to just hold on a moment. I actually have the slide presentation. I need to just grab it here and I'll be able to put it onto my system. So you need to give me just a minute. I'll be able to do that. I just gotta see where it is. Which I had not saved it off, so I was not thinking that we would need to do this, but we have it.
I didn't know if you wanted me to just reload GoToMeeting and do it again or what. But
If you want to do that, that's fine.
right.
If we can do that quickly, that'd be great. I'll start getting this set up in the meantime as well, so that I can do it from here if we need to. So apologies for everybody about the technical issues that we're having. As we're waiting to be able to get this taken care of, I do just want to mention I've seen a few people that have gone in and have actually unmuted themselves, and occasionally we'll get feedback from your mics. I will mute you, and then I see some people unmuting themselves. I'm not muting your speaker, I'm just muting your microphone because sometimes that we're hearing that on here. So just be aware of that. Sorry?
I unmuted mine.
That's what I'm saying. I saw yours on Randall there. That's one of the ones that I was commenting on. If you're unmuting it there, that we're hearing your speaker instead of Jim. So if you leave yours muted, we'll be able to hear the Jim. You'll still be able to hear him, and that's what we want to make sure that we're hearing is him and not the other participants.
Okay, I'm muting mine.
Thank you. And Doug, any luck on getting connected back again here?
I'm still working on it at the moment. Should be able to do that in just a moment.
And it looks like, okay, I just found the presentation, so I'll be able to bring that up here if we are not able to do that. Give me just a moment to be able to find a place to be able to put this on my system.
All right. It's just really slow, really sluggish.
Okay, I do have it if we need to. We're just seeing you on the screen there now, Doug, and we're not seeing the presentation anymore.
Yeah, I have to switch to it as soon as I click the OK, I'm ready.
Okay.
It's just the computer for some reason.
If you're not, let me know. I do have it ready to go here, and I can actually just pick it up, and then I can advance the slides as you're progressing it on the screen there.
All right.
And Jim, thank you for your patience.
No, thank everybody for their patience. I want you to understand that during the Civil War, this would not have been possible.
They were socially distancing at the point of a gun, though.
Yes, true.
And their computers were really slow.
That's right.
All right, minimize that. Okay. Still, where is it? That one? Okay.
Oh, I need to give you, it's actually, we're not sharing your screen on here. I need to be able to send that back. Let me do that. I need to make you the presenter again to be able to share your screen. Okay. Can you share your screen now, Doug?
Yes.
Great. And if you just make that full screen, we're back in business. And if you can slide the there, perfect. Fantastic. We can get that.
Doesn't want to go down any further now. All of a sudden.
There are two arrows at the top that point towards each other.
Yeah.
If you click on that, you can usually get it minimized and get it out of the way.
There we go.
Okay.
Great.
Fantastic. We're ready to go.
All right, we're on the right one.
Okay. So after the fall of Fort Sumter in April of 1861, Bell abandoned the Union cause and supported the Confederacy. But after Tennessee seceded on June 8th, Bell retired from public life, though his sons and sons-in-law actively supported the Confederate cause. When the Union Army occupied Tennessee in 1862, Bell fled to Huntsville, Alabama, and later to Georgia. After the war, he moved to Stewart County, Tennessee, where he managed his family-owned ironworks. He died at his home near Dover, Tennessee in 1869, and is buried in Mount Olivet Cemetery in Nashville.
Yeah, no, it's not wanting to advance. There we go.
Okay?
Yep.
Although dissatisfaction with Davis as provisional president had not surfaced sufficiently to have made him vulnerable to defeat as a candidate for president under the permanent constitution, would Bell have made a better president of the Confederacy under its permanent constitution than Davis would have. Bell lacked administrative experience and military background. His temperament might have qualified him better than Davis, however. John C. Breckinridge, my favorite. An American lawyer, politician, and soldier, he represented Kentucky in both houses of Congress and became the 14th and youngest ever vice president of the United States, serving from 1857 to 1861. He was a member of the Democratic Party. He served in the U.S. Senate during the outbreak of the American Civil War, but was expelled after joining the Confederate Army. He was appointed Confederate Secretary of War in 1865. Breckinridge was born near Lexington, Kentucky, to a prominent local family. After serving as a non-combatant during the Mexican-American War, he was elected as a Democrat to the Kentucky House of Representatives in 1849, followed by his election the following year to the U.S. House of Representatives in 1850. He was nominated for vice president at the 1856 Democratic National Convention to balance a ticket headed by James Buchanan. The Democrats won the election, but Breckinridge had little influence. In 1859, he was elected to succeed Senator John J. Crittenden at the end of Crittenden's term in 1861. After Southern Democrats walked out of the 1860 Democratic National Convention, the party's northern and southern factions held rival conventions in Baltimore that nominated Douglas and Breckinridge, respectively, for president. A third party, the Constitutional Union Party, nominated John Bell. These three men split the Southern vote, Breckinridge winning most of the Southern states. Taking his seat in the Senate, Breckinridge urged compromise to preserve the Union, but after the firing on Fort Sumter, he urged the neutrality of Kentucky while dealing with Confederate authorities, and was expelled from the U.S. Senate. That's about it for the various possibilities and so on. I'd like to end with a sum up by Robert E. Lee on Jefferson Davis's conduct in the presidency. I can say of those of whose performance in similar circumstances I have experienced that there is no one who could have done better. So that would be my conclusion. Unless we could have gotten John C. Breckinridge to do it. Thank you very much.
Okay, I'm going to unmute the mics for everybody. If you do have questions for Jim, you can unmute locally to be able to ask Jim questions and he should be able to hear you and respond to you there as well.
Jim, this is Michael Odanino. I've heard one of the criticisms of Jefferson Davis is that he had an inability to delegate, whereas Lincoln was able to delegate, that Jefferson Davis tried to micromanage all parts of the war. Do you concur with that, or do you have a different view?
No, I would say it's a fair criticism of Davis. It might also have applied to any of the other possibilities as well. But it's a fair criticism of Davis.
This is Mark, and one of the things that I've seen is Verena Davis and Judah Benjamin did a lot of the work whenever Jefferson Davis was ill, which was a lot of the time. Do you have anything to say about that?
I hadn't been aware of it, but it does make sense because Davis was incapacitated by neuralgia frequently.
And malaria. It came back time and again.
Yeah, I didn't know that either. Thanks for pointing it out.
What about the working business of Verena and Judah Benjamin? Judah Benjamin, all of the stuff he got rid of, so not a lot of stuff around to say what he did. But he was the almost the guy running the show.
I wouldn't necessarily agree with that, but Benjamin was certainly important to Davis.
I have a question about the government after the fall of Richmond. I understand that after Davis was captured, the government continued to go south and then to Cuba and then to England. And did Davis have any further function with the government?
I don't mean to contradict what you're saying, but my understanding of it is that of course the United States never recognized the Confederate government. And after Davis's capture, to my knowledge, and I have read 2 books on those last weeks of Jefferson Davis's flight, let me put it this way, Benjamin got away to Cuba and from there to England, but he was not attempting to continue the Confederate government.
But would you say that the government continued in some form after Davis was captured?
No, the surrenders of Johnston on April the 26th and of Richard Taylor on May the 4th and of Edmund Kirby Smith on May the 26th. That would have ended the military presence of the Confederacy. And as I say, I've never heard it stated that anyone, well, I take it back. There's a movie with John Wayne and Rock Hudson that you might say implies a continuation of the Confederacy, but that's about it.
The MOSB, you don't feel is still a part of that?
I would say no.
Hi, I have a question. If Breckinridge was not from Kentucky, do you think he could have served better and did a better job, because he does have military experience and administrative experience?
Yeah, your qualification there to start, if he had not been from Kentucky, if he had been from further south and therefore been eligible in the first round of selections, yeah, I think he would have been a better choice. He was technically eligible in the second round of selections, but there was no candidate against Davis in the second round.
This is Mark again. One of the things that's always been debated is, did Judah Benjamin and Jefferson Davis kill or finance Booth to kill Lincoln?
There again, there are different views on that. I think the established, which doesn't mean it's true, but the established consensus is that no, neither one of them had any knowledge of or involvement in that assassination. Oh, and I should add that at the time, zealots were moving heaven and earth to find evidence that they had some role in it. And if no evidence could have been produced at the time, I just don't feel there was any.
It's my understanding that Davis was asked to surrender the Confederacy, and he said that he was unable to do so because he didn't have the plenipotentiary power, and that it could only be dissolved by the states that called it into existence at the beginning.
Yes,
so
yes, that is true.
Did it simply stop functioning, or was there an official end?
That's one of the awkwardnesses of the end of it. Yeah, there was no official end to the Confederacy. And
but didn't the archives go south, and the Treasury and part of the cabinet with Benjamin Judah and Breckinridge?
That's right. But there, past Davis's capture, there was no attempt on anybody's part to say that they, the Confederacy, and being the money was turned over to Union authorities, and those archives that were not destroyed were also captured for the Union.
How much of that ended up going abroad?
here again, I believe that Benjamin was the only Confederate cabinet member who did go abroad, and he did not bring any money with him.
So your conclusion is that the Confederacy simply dissolved at that point when Davis was captured?
Yeah, I think that's a fair way to characterize it. And I repeat, as far as the Union was concerned, the Confederacy never legally existed anyway.
Sure, of course.
Jim, wasn't there a proclamation by Andrew Johnson in 1866 declaring that the Confederacy no longer existed, or the war was over officially? Something to that effect.
Yeah, Johnson issued one proclamation at the end of May of '65 declaring that the war was over.
Okay.
And another proclamation at the start of 1866.
Gotcha.
Did anyone other than his wife have any really true influence on Jefferson Davis? I'm talking about other politicians like Cobb or Holmes, or I know he ignored Stevens.
Yeah, I think you're right. That no other political leader, with the exception of Benjamin, would have really been able to give advice to Davis in a way that Davis would really have considered. Militarily, of course, his partnership with Lee is famous. There was plenty of consultation between the two of them.
Do you personally feel that there could have been a better president?
Only John C. Breckinridge of the possibilities. And again, you can get technical and say, well, Breckinridge wasn't technically a possibility.
Can you comment, Jim, on the relationship between Jefferson Davis and Braxton Bragg?
Yes. They were not old allies from the Mexican War. And Davis did consider, on several occasions, well, on 2 occasions, did consider relieving Bragg. The problem was who to replace him with, and the circumstances for that. So it never came about. But the 2 of them, well, let me put it this way. They were not old friends or old allies. They both had a great deal of respect for each other, of course. But Davis had been willing to jettison Bragg in November of '62. And it was Joe Johnston who interceded on Bragg's behalf to get Davis not to do it. Then, of course, a year and a half later, it was Joe Johnston who did take Bragg's position. And
Professor, do you believe that if Breckinridge had been president, that the end result of the war would have been different?
it's possible. As you know, the war was, I would say, as late as '64 was still a war that the Union could possibly have failed to win. You remember that the stalemate at Richmond didn't look like it would be broken up until the very end of the war. And if Breckinridge had been president and you had not had the disputes between the president and Johnston that resulted in Hood's appointment in the Tennessee campaign by Hood, you would not have had that. Yeah, it might have made a difference.
Jim, what could you say as to the positive contributions that Jefferson Davis made to the Confederacy?
Um, in view of the possible alternative choices, I think Davis, I'm not going to say he was, well, I'll go with General Lee on that. That as, yeah, this quotation from Lee, I can say of those of whose performance in similar circumstances I have experienced that there is no one who could have done better. And I think even if you compare Davis with Lincoln, had Lincoln been on the losing side, there would have been plenty of criticisms of Lincoln as a chief executive. Those criticisms are moot because he won. But, you know.
All right, this is Michael Odomino. If there are no more questions, Jim, we all extend our great appreciation for you taking the time and effort, and Doug also, to make this presentation possible online. And that I think I can speak for all of us that notwithstanding COVID, we're enjoying some superb presentations, thanks to David and the willingness of speakers to participate in these online presentations. And we hope to have you back in person once the library reopens, Jim. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, David. Thank you, Michael, and all the participants. Thank you for your time.
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye.
Okay, David, you can shut her down.
Thanks, Michael.